Hello and welcome to a brand new series of Used Car Heaven, the programme that helps you get behind the wheel of your next car. This week we'll be letting viewer and classic car fan Mark Collier loose in 3 of his dream cars. But which one will he choose? While John Slattery will be trying to offer Mark wheels that are a little different. And our car doctor opens his surgery doors to cure your motoring maladies.
Hello, I'm Mark Collier. I'm a computer technician and I'd like to trade this car in for a 1970s classic family saloon.
Our first car was the final work of Sir Alec Isigonis, the automotive design genius behind the original Mini. At the time it was revolutionary, featuring excellent interior packaging, advanced hydroelastic suspension, a 5-speed gearbox and an attractive older body. Cutting edge for 1969. Let's see what Mark thinks of the Austin Maxi. What do you think of it? I mean, do you like the looks of it, first of all?
I like the look of a Maxi.
Do you?
It always appealed to me.
It appealed to me. I can remember as a youngster and this car coming out and thinking, you know, my dad used to get company cars and always saying, get one of those Maxi things. It was quite sort of revolutionary of its day,
at the time,
wasn't it?
The amount of space you could get in the back when you put the seats down and things like that. It was a great car, and I always remember when I was in the Scouts, when I was in the Venture Scouts, the Venture Scout leader used to have a Maxi. And he used to get sort of 3/10 and half the gear we needed in the back of it.
It's
it was
amazing,
great fun.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think you could use this every day? Do you think the family would want to use this every day?
I could probably use this every day. It's got the space that I need. I think my wife might have a bit of a problem with a Maxi. Mind you,
image-wise?
Image-wise, yes. Mind you, we were impressed. We were at we went to the Classic Car Show last year, and there was one of these in the Classic Car Show, and the people who were driving it actually used it as a camping vehicle, and they could get a double bed in the back. So we do a lot of camping, so who knows?
Just need the curtains on the windows.
Well, that's what they had. They actually had curtains on the. It was quite impressive.
Look back to 1969 and the Austin Maxi should have been the car that took over the world. Unfortunately, its strengths were overshadowed at the 1969 launch. The 1500cc engine left the car feeling underpowered, and the cable-operated gear change stretched and felt sloppy in no time at all. Although British Leyland answered these criticisms over the 10 years the car was made for, the early problems haunted it until production ended in 1981, when the unremarkable Maestro replaced the car that should have took over the world. So why should we recommend buying a Maxi in the 21st century? Well, they're very practical cars. The Maxi is also shorter, lighter and more spacious than a modern-day Ford Focus. And with a late model car like this from 1979, it offers reasonable performance and handling. And if you're the sort of person who likes to get their hands dirty under the bonnet, the good news is that with a Maxi, parts are readily available and easy to fit. Maxi prices vary, but it's not in huge demand, so you're not paying a premium for desirability. Ownership starts at around £100 for a tatty example in need of lots of TLC, to over £1,000 for the best examples. Mark's £1,000 should get him a car in excellent condition. But will he be tempted by the Austin Maxi? Well, Mark, that's the first car of the day, the Maxi. I mean, look at the condition of this car. It's immaculate.
Oh, you could certainly shave in it, couldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's beautiful.
But is it worth £2,000?
Depends what you want from a car, doesn't it?
It's a lot of money for
It's a lot of money for a car that I'm going to use every single day. I might even put a dog in the back of it, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't want to ruin a classic car, do you?
No.
So whether £2,000...
Something that's maybe best left in the garage and taken out at the weekend sort of thing, perhaps?
It's what you'd take to a show, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
You want to show it off.
So you're quite keen on it?
It's nice, yeah,
It's
definitely.
nice. OK, thanks, Mark. That's car number 1 driven. There are 2 more cars to drive, so we don't want to know Mark's decision just yet. Let's see what's next, though. Another British classic from the 70s, a sports saloon that would genuinely crack the 100-mile-per-hour barrier. The Sprint version was the first British mass-produced car to sport a 16-valve 2-litre engine. Let's see what Mark thinks of the Triumph Dolomite.
Would you regard this as being a car that's got great looks and a real classic?
Definitely.
Yeah.
You've only got to look at the actual car itself, and you look at it and you think, that's sleek.
Yeah.
It looks it.
A 70s sports saloon.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. The equivalent of an 80s XR3i, something like that.
It's got the power, it's got the poke.
It's got the power, it's got the poke, and it's got the looks. And it's got the style.
Now, what about the most important test on this car? Your dear wife. Is this a car that she would be happy with?
It's got lots of chrome.
So
it gets a definite thumbs up.
She'd be content on a Sunday morning, out there, getting the chrome work nice and shiny.
Yes, she would be.
When British Motor Corporation bought Triumph and Jaguar, they reworked the technically advanced Triumph 1300, giving it a more powerful 1850cc engine and a sportier front and rear. The result arrived in 1972, called the Triumph Dolomite. During its life, there were many Dolomite variants, from the base 1300 to the rapid and highly desirable Sprint. All had a reputation of excellent fit and finish. So, what does the Triumph Dolomite have to offer to Mark? Well, it's not as practical as the Maxi, but it will seat 4 adults and all their luggage in reasonable comfort. And with power on the Dolomite going to the rear wheels, it makes for a sportier drive. Like the Maxi, it's cheap, simple and easy to maintain, which I'm sure will appeal to Mark. Dolomite prices start at around £100 for a rough 1500, up to about £3,500 for a highly desirable Sprint model in very good condition. With £1,000, Mark should get a decent 1500, but since he's not afraid of getting his hands dirty, we'd suggest he went for a shabbier but more powerful 1850, just like the one we have here. So let's find out what Mark thinks about the Dolomite.
Well, Mark, I kind of get the impression that you're quite keen on this car.
There's something about it.
I thought there was, the way you were driving it. Yeah, I can just tell.
The seats are comfortable, the driving position's comfortable. Even though it's an automatic, it responds well. Yeah. It's got the style, the wood's wood. It's got something about it, the character.
Plus also, I guess, the fact that this is half the price of the Maxi.
Exactly.
£1,000.
Exactly.
We'll buy you this.
And as a Triumph, you don't like to say it, but it's a better mark.
Yes, yes. Bit better class of car.
Yes.
Not that you want to be snobby about it.
Oh no, definitely not.
Heaven forbid.
Oh, as if I'd do such a thing.
So that's 2 cars out of the way. You've driven the Maxi, you've driven the Dolomite now.
Yeah.
I kind of get the impression of which of those 2 you prefer, but there's one more still to drive.
Right.
So we don't want a decision yet.
Okay.
We want to know that in part 2 of Used Car Heaven. But before that, we need to head off to the doctor's surgery. The car doctor, Simon Hughes, is back again.
This week we're looking at scratch repairs on cars, and in fact I've got an email off Donna Moore who's got a Chrysler Voyager with similar scratches to this. Now, rough rule of thumb, if the scratch is bigger than an A4 piece of paper, it's not something that you can repair at home and it needs doing in a professional body shop, and in this case it's likely that the whole side of the car is going to need repairing. However, we have got a car over here that we can do some repairs on, and we've got a car here that the edge of the door is scratched, and we're going to look at touching that in. We've also got some scratches on the sill as well that hopefully we're going to spray. So as you can see down here, we've got all these scratches, and these are caused by scuffs over the years, and they're quite common on any car this age. Because it's black, we can touch it in quite easily, and we're going to spray this just using our trusty old spray can, and it's a case of getting in here and just doing some nice even strokes. Now, I've previously cleaned this, so I know there's no oil or anything on it. I'll do that bit there as well. Well, that's the spraying done. Now we've got some touching up, and all I've done is spray the same paint into its lid, and I've got a kiddie's touch-up brush, and we're going to do this edge of the door, which is a bit of a classic scrape, and so it takes a bit of concentration, so see how we go. Now, what we don't want to do is put too much paint on in one go. Otherwise it looks really ugly, but just gentle strokes like that, and hopefully we'll manage to do it with just the amount of paint that is on the brush, and it should look pretty okay like that. So there you go. So that's all there is really to little repairs. So we've done some spraying and some touching up, and you can really give your car a good makeover for, in our case, less than £10. So that's it for here, and I'll be back next week, hopefully solving some more motoring problems for you. See you then.
So far on this week's Used Car Heaven, we've been looking for a classic car for this week's viewer, Mark Collier. Now, we've already driven the Maxi and the Triumph Dolomite, and I kind of know which of these two cars Mark prefers, but before he makes his final decision, we have a third car for him to drive in part 2 of the programme. Also in part 2, we'll give you more tips and advice on what to look for if you fancy a classic car like this. Join us soon.
In part 1, our viewer Mark Collier got behind the wheel of two 70s British classics. Now, Mark's a fan of British cars from the 70s, but for his final car, we thought we'd get him to try something a bit different. With innovative design touches taken from their experience in making aeroplanes, this manufacturer quickly made a reputation for making some of the toughest vehicles around. By the time this vehicle appeared, the company had already made a name for themselves in international rallying, including several prestigious Monte Carlo rally victories. But will Mark be prepared to give this tough Swede, the Saab 90, a chance?
So Mark, do you like the look of the Saab?
I like the appeal of a Saab.
Yeah, I thought you couldn't sort of say, wow, what a beautiful looking car,
No.
but it has an appeal to it, doesn't it?
It looks powerful.
Yeah.
It looks like what it was meant to be. Saab didn't mess about. We're making powerful cars, big cars, they're going to go. They're not necessarily going to be sports cars, but they've got that oomph behind them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that's what they look like.
Yeah.
I like the feel of them. It's got the power steering. For a car this weight, you've got to have power steering.
Otherwise,
You'd be absolutely exhausted by
go
the
to
end.
the gym every morning before you head off in one.
You can tell the difference. It's got the bigger wheel. It's got electrics in the wheel as part of the
Yeah,
wheel.
yeah.
It's nice. Drives well. All in all, it's a nice little car. If it's tempting.
What about your wife? How would
I
she
knew you'd
feel?
bring that one up.
How would she feel about it?
She'd divorce me in a minute. She hates. Well, I say that. No, if this goes out on television,
She hates Saabs.
she hates Saabs. Yes, yeah. She's always. It's her idea basically that we ought to move towards classic cars and things like that.
But Saab doesn't fall into
Not
that
in her view, no.
Okay.
These cars are as tough as old boots, even by modern standards. The build quality is superb, and if they're well looked after, capable of high mileages. For Mark's £1,000, we would suggest he avoided turbo models and looked around for either an early 80s 99, or if he prefers something a bit more modern, there are plenty of much younger and better equipped 900s to be had for the money. If you're brave, Saabs can be found for under £1,000. We found a 1988 900 for £280 and a 1977 99 for £695.
Well, Mark, you've driven all three cars. What do you think of the Saab?
It's a nice car. As I was saying when we were driving it, you feel the brute power when you're in there.
You can feel it's a more modern car as well, can't you?
Yeah, it doesn't look like a classic.
Well, that's maybe the point of it. You know, it's not quite got the old feel that you're looking for. It's a bit too up to date, maybe.
I don't like plastic.
No.
They've got these bumpers out the front and the back.
Plus,
Nice.
your wife doesn't like me either.
As we said, she'll kill me if
It could come into play, couldn't it?
it could come into play in my decision, yes.
Okay, don't tell me your final decision just
Okay.
yet. I think I know where you're heading, because before that, we need to find out what this week's alternative car is. Here's John Slattery.
As you know, we like to be a bit different with our alternative. After all, it's here to tempt you away from our main three. And this week's car is no exception. Originally launched in 1970 as the GS, this facelifted GSA version arrived in 1979. And although it looks unusual now, at the time the GSA was a revelation. Offering such technological advances as hydromatic suspension, an air-cooled flat-4 engine and an instrument binnacle that would even make Captain Kirk proud, the GSA really was way ahead of its time. But despite all this technology, the car did have some fundamental flaws, some of which become more apparent with age. For a start, poor paint and panel finish means that rust is a major problem, with floor plans, door sills and rear subframes succumbing very quickly.
But don't let that put you off, because the GSA is actually quite a nice little car to drive. Okay, so you have to rev the engine an awful lot to get any sort of performance out of it. The gearbox is a bit clunky, as you can hear. And the steering on this particular one is quite heavy, especially when you're kind of trying to park it. But this car is 20 years old, you have to remember that. Now, many cars look this cool on the outside and on the inside. One thing you have to be careful of in this car is the brakes. Why, I hear you ask, why do we have to be careful with the brakes? Well, they're actually already pressurized, which means you only have to touch the brake pedal for the car to stop. So you don't have to do a lot of pumping to get the pressure up to get any sort of braking in this car. And for a car of its time, that was quite unusual. So it means that if you slam your hard foot on the brake now, this happens. And I'm only touching the brake by doing that, and the whole car nearly shudders to a stop and scares the living daylights out of the car behind me. So when you do get into one of these, especially if it's not your own, remember, touch the brakes. Don't whack the brakes.
If you are lucky enough to find a used GSA, you can expect to pay absolutely nothing for a very, very bad example, all the way up to 2 to 3 grand for a minter. The only real problem is trying to find one, because they are becoming rarer and rarer by the minute. So at the end of the day, the GSA makes for a very good second-hand buy. Not alone is it practical and cheap to run, it's becoming more and more of a collectible, which means prices are on the increase. So if you can find one that's been well looked after, my advice is get one, because not alone are they a good investment, but they are also pretty cool to be seen around town.
Mark, John thought that an ideal alternative car to the three that we've had for you today would be the Citroën GS. What do you think?
A bit too quirky for me. And not easy to work on either.
Bit too complicated, more things likely to go wrong, going to cost a lot of money?
I would have thought so, yeah. And it doesn't look like a classic.
I was going to say that. I mean, maybe to the French it might be a classic, but to us Brits it's not got that sort of feel to it, has it?
Not really, no.
So, forget it.
Yes, please.
Not interested in that.
Not
Citroën
interested.
GS, no.
No.
Okay, we need to have a look at those three cars again and work out what you're going to decide on.
Okay.
Well, Mark, it's decision time for you. I would like from you, please, a 3-2-1. What car would you place in third position?
It's going to have to be this one, the Saab.
The Saab, third?
Yes.
I'm quite surprised about that.
Well, if I took it home, I think I'd be in trouble.
Really?
Well,
Your wife just doesn't like it?
No, that's one reason. I mean,
You're quite tempted by it, I thought, when we were driving.
But what do I want a car for? I want something that's economical, something I can work on, something I can get spare parts on easily, and it'll do me for the X number of years.
It's not quite different enough either, I don't suppose, is it?
No, it's almost too modern.
Yeah.
Than what I was looking for personally.
Okay, Saab third. Second place, please, would be?
Second place is going to be the Maxi.
The Maxi.
Yes.
Despite its condition,
Gorgeous
beautiful car.
condition. Lovely car, lovely to drive, but a bit old manish for me.
Another 10 or 20 years down the line, and if you're after another classic car, that might be the one.
It might well end up in my garage when I'm retired, yes indeed.
So it's the Saab third, the Maxi second, which means number one, top spot for the Triumph Dolomite.
Nice sporty saloon.
Smart car, isn't it?
Very smart car. Nice, economical, it's got the power underneath it, it's got the room inside it, and it's classic enough for what I wanted.
And I think £1,000 for that is pretty good, isn't it?
I'm well pleased with that sort of price.
Yeah.
It's nice.
You'd be happy to drive that all day, and it's the perfect car to drive every day.
It is the perfect car to drive every day, yeah, no problem at all.
Do you know what? I think we ought to take it out for another spin.
I hope you were going to say that.
Just to give up, just to make sure we're okay on it.
Fine.
Come on.
When I was first driving cars in the late 70s, I could only afford a second-hand or third-hand or even fourth-hand Hillman Imp, and I was always drooling over the people that I knew that drove around in Dolomites.
Yeah.
So, if you're tempted by any of the cars we've featured this week, what problems should you be looking for? Bodily, Dolomites can rust almost anywhere, but a good place to start is the base of the windscreen pillar. It's a good indicator of how far rust will have progressed in the entire car. Check the subframe mounts for rust, or come MOT time, you'll be left with an expensive engine and gearbox removal bill. Small 1300 and 1500 cars are tougher than the 1850 and Sprint models, which can suffer from overheating. Check for coolant leaks from the water pump, and in the winter make sure you use good quality antifreeze. Just like the Dolomite, you have to check Maxis for rust. Particular weak points are the wings, doors and sills. Also check the floor, subframe and rear suspension mounting points, the strike of death for many a Maxi. The Saabs are over-engineered and will do huge mileages. There's a drive chain linking the engine and gearbox, which wears and gives a timing chain type rattle from the front of the engine, and is not easy or cheap to replace. Rust only seems to be a major problem on some late 70s 99 models, but don't rule it out completely. Doors and wheel arches are vulnerable behind those substantial water seals. So, Mark chose the Triumph Dolomite. Personally, I would have done too. Thank you for watching. See you next time on Used Car Heaven, when we'll be letting another viewer behind the wheel of their next car.